Our theme this month is living in spiritual integrity, and today's topic is living in spiritual integrity. So far this month, we've talked about the seeking of a spiritual life, the fact that the sacred self, which is our source of being, also exists within each one of us at some level of expression. And we've talked about how we can align our sacred selves with spiritual integrity. So eventually rhetoric must be replaced with action. And today let's do that by discussing how we learn to live with spiritual integrity. Well, what is integrity anyway? During my talk on March 3rd, I mentioned that Ernest Holmes was heard to say that the science of mind point of view aligns completely with the dictionary definition of integrity, that is, the state of being whole and undivided. And that's in our spirituality. It's establishing the process of walking our talk. That is, practicing our spiritual beliefs in all areas of our lives. In the study of metaphysics, which is what the science of mind relates to, that means going beyond the physical. Just as physics deals with the laws that govern the physical world, such as those of gravity or the properties of waves, metaphysics describes what is beyond the physical, the nature and origin of reality itself, the immortal soul, and the existence of a supreme being. Because of a commonly shared spiritual philosophy held by unity, religious science, and many other independent metaphysical teachings, the term New Thought was adopted to denote a spiritual movement. The basic premise of New Thought is that everything is one vast universal mind, the human mind and body included. By fostering the thought of healing in the human mind, body, the God part of the mind could effect a healing. This is a holistic approach, characterized by synthesis of body, mind, and spirit, as well as the integration of the spiritual, philosophical, and metaphysical. This theory has led to the success of such spiritual movements like unity and religious science, and has stimulated the birth of many independent teaching centers and churches, along metaphysical lines as well. There is even a University of Metaphysics in, where else, Sedona, Arizona, which offers a variety of college and graduate level classes and degrees in metaphysics. This is quite a long way from Plato's writing titled Metaphysica, one of the many treatises written by a man born in 438 BCE. And you'll remember, of course, that BCE stands for Beyond the Common Area. Let me correct myself there. It's before the common area. So New Thought, as you've heard said many times, is indeed ancient thought, revisited in modern times. In today's world, we strive for understanding of timeless truths, stated in modern-day language and examples, so that we can learn and practice these magnificent philosophies. There is a saying, no matter where you go, there you are. In fact, Jon Kabat-Zinn wrote a book on mindfulness with that title about 25 years ago. We, of course, believe our world today is much more complicated than his in the 1990s, or Dr. David Hawkins' world in the early 21st century when he wrote about reality, spirituality, and modern man. To live with integrity, however, to live with integrity, is simply being awake, aware, and mindful of the state of being whole in each thought, in each day, and in each experience. Yes, the world changes, and so do we. It's the nature of life. We're fortunate to have many guidelines in science of mind that support us in doing so. One is the creed, What We Believe, which is available in every monthly Science of Mind magazine. And the shortened version of that, which we say together every Sunday morning here. And look at this. This is the March magazine from Science of Mind 2019, pages 11 and 12. Right across from What We Believe is Dr. Ken Gordon's column titled, First, Be True to Yourself. There's another BGO, another blinding glimpse of the obvious, that in order to practice what we believe, we must be true to ourselves, ergo, be in integrity. That's living with integrity, isn't it? And another way of saying, in order to be it, I have to believe it. Here's another aha. The first two letters of believe are B-E. B. Yesterday's daily guide in that same March edition of the Science of Mind magazine had this quote from Ralph Waldo Trine. As all truth exists now and awaits simply our perception of it, so all things necessary for the present needs exist now, and await simply the power in us to appropriate them. The word appropriate, as he uses it in this quote, is meant to allocate or assign. And who is Ralph Waldo Trine? Not Emerson. He was an American philosopher, an author, and teacher who taught New Thought in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. His works were influenced by Emmett Fox, and who else but Ralph Waldo Emerson. And Trine's writings were closely followed by Napoleon Hill. Was Trine named for Emerson? There's no information to support that, but he was born 60 plus years after Emerson. He did attend Emerson College. He was familiar with Ralph Waldo Emerson's writings, and there are no coincidences. In Dr. Ken's article on the path, he describes and quotes the French philosopher and journalist Albert Camus, saying integrity has no need of rules. And Ken's take on that is this: doing the right thing depends on who you are and what you value. It's not about being right or wrong. It's about being honest with yourself and applying that honesty in all situations, no matter how challenging that may be. And, he says, in order for us to be whole, we have to honor our own internal principles. Here is something else Ernest Holmes is quoted as having said. Health is a state of wholeness in our body and mind. To me, that speaks of the alignment of the two as an example of living with integrity. In some areas of human belief, there is a difference or a separation of mind and body in us. When I first heard that, some years ago, before I became a religious scientist, I thought, well, of course there is. Everybody knows that. Eventually, though, I stopped arguing for my limitations and embraced the wholeness of me, which is universal mind expressing through me in every cell of my being, in this form, meaning the physical body. And gradually I learned that living with integrity meant accepting that I am a spiritual being having a human experience, whole and undivided. I also learned that living that meant keep studying, keep learning, keep honing or refining my craft, as the saying goes. David Hawkins, in his book I mentioned earlier in this talk, describes it like this. The modern spiritual seeker's faith has not only reason to integrate, but also the task of correlating faith in a world with a world dominated by science and technology, along with the impact of the media. Therefore, the selection of an integrated teaching and teachers deserves one's best efforts and intentions. Each step each step of spiritual evolution is self-rewarding, and thus the journey becomes self-propagating, that is, to grow and spread, and developing a way of life that is increasingly joyful. In his chapter on spiritual pathways, Hawkins writes about the emerging of the knowingness of the self, by which conflicts dissolve spontaneously. These inner transformations are accompanied by quiet relief and a greater sense of internal freedom, safety, and peace. The power of love of self progressively grows and eventually eclipses all negative feelings, doubts, and obstacles. I'd like to close today with some thoughts I have chosen to immerse myself in over the past 25 years, and Holmes' book, Living the Science of Mind, contains many of them. So here's number one. The great spiritual teachers of the ages have taught that each of us is on the pathway of eternal evolution, the purpose of which is to produce in the individual everything inherent in the nature of the divine. Number two, every one of us has an identity in spirit. It will never grow less. It eternally unfolds and becomes more. My consciousness of good is the law of elimination of every discord. My science and spiritual mind treatment work enforces that law and is the activity of its power. Number four, there is divinity back of every individual, expressing as a unique manifestation of divine spirit. We should unify with everything and continue to keep intact and whole the God-given spiritual ego at the center of our individualized being. Number five, there is a law of mental equivalence, which means that everything that is consciously and subjectively in our thinking tends to radiate an atmosphere, a vibration, a current of thought, an inward acceptance which automatically attracts to itself that which is like itself. Number six, back of all form, at the center of creation, there is a divine pattern, which is the reality of that thing, that form. What I change is not the reality, but my perception of it. 7, when I am in integrity, there is no limit or condition that would restrict me, as long as I am living constructively in unity, love, and compassion with everything around me. And number 8, truth is that whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. The state of being whole and undivided is who and what we are from the beginning of life. Living with integrity is how we learn and apply walking our talk, that is, practicing our spiritual beliefs in all areas of our lives in this thing called life. And so it is.